Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the 412 Double Play Podcast. I am, as always, host Michael Castrogano. Spring training games kicked off this week. I'll be recapping this past week at the end of the show, but we're kicking into gear with our farm system preview, starting with the Bradenton Marauders. And for this week's episode, we're bringing back our friend who was play-by-play commentator for the Marauders last season, Ben Pokorny. Ben, welcome back to the show. How have you been?
Thanks. Good to be here. There's so many great guys that played for the Marauders last year, and so many great guys I got to see in the complex. So I'm always happy to come on here and spread the good news about what's up and coming from the lower levels.
Just because you've got Bradenton, you've got Pirate City, the complex, like everything all year round is pretty much happening right there in that part of the country. We're recording this on Friday, so disclaimer, like last week. Anything that happens after this point, we're not going to talk about. And this part, we're specifically going to be focusing on the Marauders anyway. But some news that did drop this morning: the Marauders dropped some script merch. I'm not a big on the look overall. It's very much resembling some recent Pirate stuff, but I kind of love the Bradenton B and some of the original stuff they do.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to get that gold B like embroidered on a hat. I had to settle for like a cheap Amazon version, so it's like screen printed on. It's like something you get from Fanatics. I do have my spring training hat, which came in the mail, which I do like. But for the Pirates, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you could see that. But what are your preferences? Because the Marauders have a couple of the logos now. They've got the script, they've got that gold B,
Yep.
they've got the Marty. What's your favorite between those, if you have one?
So my favorite that we actually wore would probably be just the Marty hat. I just thought it was like a very classic minor league look that, you have kind of the cartoony logo on the front. I thought it was a really good fit. A lot of guys preferred, though, I'd say every starting pitcher got to pick their hat, the team hat that they were going to wear that day. My favorite was probably most of the guys' favorite, rather, was the script B that you're talking about, the golden script B. Those were batting practice hats originally, but guys just like absolutely loved them. And then there was the skull and crossbats hat that was a Thomas Harrington favorite last year. My favorite hat that we never wore that we have they had now, but was the Marty the Marauder hat, but it was a yellow top to the hat with a black bill. I always thought that was so cool. I liked anything that was kind of just yellow, kind of like the Pirate City Connects, how they just pop with the yellow. And I thought the yellow Marty the Marauder hats were really cool, but they were retired, I think 2 years ago. But that was one I wish could have seen the field for sure.
Yeah. And I agree on that because I feel like it's fun when they have their own individual twist on it and not trying to copy basically what the Pirates are doing. With like the B, it's very sharp. With the Marty, it's very cartoonish and I feel like appeals to kids. And so you've got that wide range there.
Yeah.
The Marauders themselves, they're year in and year out really strong team. They finished 2023 with a 76-54 record, 2.5 games out of making playoffs. Just fell behind, I think, Lakeland Flying Tigers.
Yeah.
But like I said, another strong season. They just missed the playoffs the year before that. 2021, they won it. I think, was that the year that they won it?
Yep. Low A Southeast. Yeah.
Like it's weird. Obviously, with minor league ball, there's a lot of turnover. But what were some things, because you got to watch it, every day pretty much? What were some of the things that most impressed you in your season with the Marauders?
I think the thing that impressed me the most, and it kind of ties into being in that playoff race, is that I think there's this misconception in the world of baseball that the players don't necessarily care as much about winning or losing games in single A. But you would have thought we were playing for the World Series in the last month of that season last year. Guys were scoreboard watching Lakeland and all the other teams that were in this playoff race every day. It meant a lot to guys to be part of a winning team. Who doesn't want to win? That's a given. But I think the biggest misconception with minor league baseball is that guys, And I'm sure there's some somewhere that don't care, but every guy on that Marauders roster last year wanted to make the playoffs. They wanted to win. They wanted to get a ring, to be a part of something. And I think that just comes down to the coaching staff and getting players. I think at the minor league level, the biggest thing is to get players to be playing for each other, and that's how you get kind of this push to want to win games, to want to be successful. Um, I think to a certain degree, it gets you more notoriety when you're winning games. I mean, you think about Davies Nadal last year. This is one of my favorite examples. Is he wasn't that well known, in terms of the grand scheme of the Pirates' prospect depths. Um, Hits a couple of inside the park home runs, has some steals of home, and a couple months later, he's traded to the Kansas City Royals. So that's a guy who, because the team was playing well, the team were getting notoriety. They were, out and about on social media. That he ended up catching somebody's eye somewhere, and it worked out for him.
Yeah, he was one of, I mean, once again, a lot of turnover, a lot of
Yeah.
prospects that come in pre-draft, post-draft. Only 3 players got into 100 or more games in Bradenton. Jesus Castillo, which I
Yep.
think he's got a lot of upside. Rodolfo Nolasco, who has been one of the top prospects for a long time. I don't know if he's still in the organization. I had to look into that. And then Nadal, none of whom actually posted an OPS over 800, but they were all pretty close. They were all like mid to high
Yeah.
700s.
And
Um,
when you talk about Jesus and Davies there, those are in my opinion, I think I JJ last year, even in conversations, I think those were the two best defenders on the team, were Nadal and
yep.
Castillo. Um, Castillo played every position in the infield and outfield. Nadal played every position except for first base and catcher. He pitched an inning once, in a blowout game. They're just so versatile, incredible speed. Their arm strength is through the roof. Um, and they were, off the top of my head, I know Nadal was the leader, but I think Davies and Jesus were the two stolen base leaders. Castillo
I
played
was
more
going to
games
say,
than
yeah.
anyone else in the Florida State League. He was first or second in walks by the end of the year. So they were guys that I think were, I like to say, like, they did their job. Their job was to play 5-star defense and to get on base and steal bags and create chaos, and that they excelled in that department.
Yeah, I didn't have their stats pulled up. So Castillo, yeah, he led the team, stolen bases 39, Nadal 33, only 4 caught stealing. So both
Yeah.
of them really excelled on the bases. Um, for the team, looking at the pitching staff, the 130 games over the season, 78 of them started by just 5 players. Dominic
Yep.
Parachi, Wilbur Dotel, Derek Diamond, Alessandro Urcolani, and Owen Kellington. Kellington's a name I mentioned in my top 30 prospects, someone who I think is a fast riser potentially. I think he had some injury
Yeah.
issues, forgetting things I talked about in the recent episodes. But these are all dudes who, at least I've heard of. I vividly remember mentioning them in my weekly recaps last year. Who among this group stood out to you the most, and why?
Man, that's tough. Just I'd say from a baseball point of view, I'd say the guy that to me improved the most was Urkalani. Unfortunately, he picked up an injury towards the end of the year. Um, but at the start of the season, he came in with really a fastball and a slider, and that was about it. And he hadn't really developed any other pitches. And I'd say I remember meeting him the week before the season, saying, "What do you throw?" He's like, "Fastball, slider. I try to throw changeup, but it doesn't do what I want it to do." And he's kind of spent that whole season developing his changeup, and while doing that, his velo went from 93 up towards 97 consistently, and he turned into a flamethrower for the Marauders last year. So um, Urkalani is kind of one of those guys you talk about in a draft where he's a physical beast. Um, he is strong, so young, tall, just naturally gifted to be a hard fastball throwing pitcher. And Matt Ford, who is one of the best baseball minds I've ever met in baseball, the Marauders pitching coach last year, and he'll be there again this year. Uh, just knew with every guy's little niche how to connect with them and grow them into a better player. I think Derek Diamond was another guy for me who showed a ton of improvement. Um, one of the things that he had that, I don't want to say no one else had, I think Thomas Harrington, I'd put him up there in this department together, was his longevity. No one else in the first month of the season could throw 7 2/3 like it was, another day, like Derek Diamond could. And I think
Really?
that comes from playing at Ole Miss and being a regular starter for a top 10 team in the country, where he was just able to throw 7 innings 2 weeks into the season. And he had a big hitch in his delivery at the start of the year. He kind of had a big pause as he'd bring his lead leg up, and got rid of that and ended up starting to sit around 93. And his ERA kept going down and down and down, and he ends up in Greensboro. But
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough of the pitching staff. And Derek is probably one of the best people I've met in terms of players on a team too. He's just such a down to earth guy. He won the Community Partners Award, so he got to go up to Pittsburgh for his community service work in Bradenton. So just so many great people.
That's great. And the thing is, guys like Parachi, Diamond, they're not going to be on, at least not many, top 30 prospect lists
No.
because just some guys get overlooked, but they're core members of the organization who are definitely
Yeah.
putting in innings, definitely providing a, a benefit to the team. Diamond finished with a sub 4 ERA. Parachi pitched 22 games. I think he led the team in innings pitched, 90.7
Yep.
innings. 90.7, 90 and 2/3 innings. Um, so there's definitely value from these guys. In addition to
Yeah,
that,
and
you also got. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you talk about Parachi specifically, he definitely deserves some credit because he was the only starter that really went wire to wire the whole year. Uh,
Right.
and that's at any level. At the major leagues, I'd say it's even tougher down at the minor league level. He went wire to wire, and towards the end of the year, when some guys might be struggling, some guys might be injured, there were definitely days where he had to, go 3 innings of one guy, 2 innings of another, and kind of piece together a Sunday afternoon. You knew every day that Dominic Prachi started, you're going to get 6 innings. You're going to get 6 innings. He's going to throw strikes, and it's going to be competitive. And that's so invaluable because just thinking of the broader scope of things, it might be a single A game, sure, whatever it is, but Parachi pitching 6 innings helps someone else's development because then they don't have to throw 3 times in a week, or it keeps a bullpen guy fresh for a more important moment. It's every person plays their part in the development of the guys around them. And so those guys are so invaluable. And Parachi, he had to carry the load for the Marauders the entire year last year, just kind of be that guy that they could count on to get 6 innings. And it was, it's a tough job. It's a really tough job. It's a thankless job for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about the major leagues. How many guys? I mean, I don't know how much you were able to watch it, being working the whole season,
Not
but
much.
how many starters, even league wide, are able to go 6 plus? The Cy Young
Yeah.
winner, I think, averaged like 5 and 2/3 with Blake Snell.
Yeah,
So it's not something. It's something that is invaluable, but is underappreciated. The job that
for
some of
sure.
these guys do. So at Bradenton, you got to see snippets of some other top prospects. Paul Skeens obviously had his pro
Yeah.
debut there. Harrington, you mentioned before, he was there for 2 months to lead off the year. Braxton Ashcraft, Michael Kennedy, Hunter
Yep.
Barco. The road to Pittsburgh pretty clearly starts in Bradenton. Obviously, we have our
Yeah.
spring training there, low A team. But what are your thoughts on some of those higher known, higher name
Yeah.
prospects that you saw this past season?
I'll start with Skeens.
Of course.
The just because it's I mean he was only there for 10 days, but the whirlwind that he created, there's just so many things that went on while he was there. When he was there, it was pretty much, I think he got sick of it. I got sick of it for sure. Was I think every 5 days straight from about noon to 4 p.m., Paul and I would sit in a little family room at Lecom Park and we would just be on the phone, ESPN, KDKA, whatever radio talk show or podcast, or whoever wanted to talk to him that ever, I would get emailed in the morning from the Pirates up in Pittsburgh and say, these are the people he's talking to today. And, Paul and I would sit there for a few hours and just sit on the phone and work it out. He is such an impressive human being, baseball aside. I remember the first conversation I had with him with our clubhouse manager at the time, Mark McKnight, who's a fantastic person in the Pirates organization, asking him about Air Force and just kind of where he came from, getting to know him type of thing. It's always hard trying to have a get to know you conversation with a guy that you've studied for 6 months in a row, that you've watched videos on and read about for hours on end. But I was, he talking about Air Force and his experience there, and he says, yeah, once baseball's done, I want to go back and serve. If they don't let me serve, I want to go volunteer coach at Air Force. And I'm like, this guy's 23 years old. He throws 102 miles per hour. He is going to make tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in his career, but he still wants to go and serve his country or serve the Air Force Academy at the end of the day. And he's not a guy that would say that publicly or brag about it or make it some big talking point. Just such a humble person, and a good dude. I think that's one thing I learned the most over the course of the season, is that, like, at the end of the day, we were all just 21 to 25-year-old guys. Like, it's it's pretty crazy. You're sitting there eating dinner with people, and you're talking about the weather or your family or your brothers and sisters, and then you forget, like, you just signed a $9.8 million signing bonus, didn't you? And that thought's always there in your head, like, wow, like, you're pretty impressive dude. But Paul's a great guy, and I mean, his pitching speaks for itself. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him end up in Pittsburgh in the first couple months of the season. I'd be surprised if he spends much more time down in Indy or Altoona. The fact that he even came to Bradenton last year and then went to Altoona afterwards was shocking to me. Just after all the innings he pitched for LSU that year, in addition to the summer before pitching for Team USA, just a physical beast. And his personality, his character speaks to why he has been able to gain such success on the field. It goes hand in hand for sure. Thomas
Yeah.
Harrington. Sorry, I'm just rolling here through all the guys you were
Go
mentioning,
for
but
it.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Skeens, a lot of what you're saying is what we're hearing out of camp. His interactions with players, especially with the Keller extension. Again, I'll talk about that at the end of the episode to
Yeah,
once you're up. Um, just like so eager to be in the clubhouse, learn, be working with guys, be working with catchers. He spent part of the winter down in Bradenton working with Henry Davis and a bunch of other guys who Davis was able to get together. Seems like between those two, we're getting some like big, I don't want to say like loud, but leaders. We're getting these leaders in the clubhouse, and
leaders for sure.
Skeens, yeah, Skeens is a tall dude, and so certainly can be commanding. The guy
Yeah,
that you're talking about with Harrington, it feels like he's more under the radar, maybe because of the velocity, maybe because Campbell University is only kind of up and coming, with Harrington being like the second big draft pick out of there. Go ahead,
yeah.
tell me about Harrington, because I love him. I recently
Um,
saw him on a top 100 list.
oh yeah. So Tom is, I'd say, probably one of the guys I was closest to on the Marauders. Everything you would expect in a small town Southern boy. Just uber polite and respectful to everyone that he meets, and you mentioned it, quiet dude, pretty quiet dude. He's not going to be the guy out there fist pumping or screaming or putting on a show on the mound necessarily, but he's just a worker. He's a guy that's going to show up every day. His command is dominant. His pitch mix is very well developed for a guy that played at a smaller program. And I think the biggest thing for Tom is the mental side of his game. Just considering coming from Campbell and, being a lesser known commit out of high school. And I'd say even for a guy that was picked in it was the compensation balance round, I think, when Tom got picked up, if I'm
Yeah, I think
not
he was
mistaken,
comp
but
B.
uh, Compy,
Pretty
yeah.
sure.
Who hasn't really gotten talked about that much in terms of, anything pipeline related or stuff like that. But his mental side of his game is just on another level, in terms of his pitching. Uh, Very laid back, as a person who, um, just does his job, comes to work, and has fun. He's one of the stories that I remember from Tom was we were playing in Tampa. I think it was our first trip to Steinbrenner of the year, and it was the same weekend that the Pirates were playing Tampa Bay, for the May World Series last year, and all the Pittsburgh writers were down there covering the Pirates, and so they said, "Can we come over and talk to some guys before your game against Tampa?" And absolutely. And I was sitting there talking with a few people in the press box 3 hours maybe before the game against Tampa, and there's just nobody on the field. The ballpark's dead, and there's one guy just standing on the pitching rubber, just like staring at home plate. And everyone in the press box is like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "That's Thomas Harrington. He's just getting focused. He's just mentally locked in the second he shows up at the ballpark every day, just ready to go to work." So I love Tom. He's a great dude, and I think he'll be a big league pitcher for the Pirates. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And I think he's gonna shine in Altoona, and I think that's a really really good stage for him and a chance for Pirates fans. I think for the first time to really get to see him, being so close to Pittsburgh. Him getting the spring training invite is such a big jump this year, and it's thoroughly deserved. Um, I think one thing for Tom, and then I'll move on. Sorry, I'm rambling here, but there's not
That's what
enough
you're
good
here for.
things to say about most of these guys. But in different for him than most guys that were drafted in his draft class as pitchers is he didn't pitch at all in the complex in the 2022 complex league season. So his first pro start was in Bradenton. That was it. It was opening day, April 7th against Clearwater, was his first ever pro game. And 2 months later, he's called up to Greensboro already. So I think for anybody, it doesn't matter where you came from. If you're getting thrown into your first pro game in front of 4,000 people, uh, and he dominated that day. I think he went 6 with like 9 Ks or something off the top of my head, but it was an unbelievable performance. And 2 months later, he's called up to Greensboro. So he's a great guy, and he texted me on his way down to spring training the other day and said, "I have 3.5 hours of Alan Jackson ready to go." And I said, "That's the North Carolina boy I know right there, ready to listen to '90s country on his trip to Bradenton." So,
I was gonna say Alan
uh,
Jackson. What is he, 40?
oh hey, that was our first bonding was old '90s country. There was one week when we were playing in Tampa, the Morgan Wallen concert was right next door to where we were staying. So
Yeah.
the hotel was just a mob scene of Morgan Wallen fans. And I was like, "Anyone else here like country?" And then Tom and I just start talking about Chattahoochee and every other song we can think of from back in the '90s country era. But yeah, a good dude. He'll be a fast riser. I mentioned Braxton Ashcraft. He was with us for a little bit of
Yep.
time, but another
Just
quiet
rehabbing.
professional. Just yeah, show up, get the job done. Um, some really impressive guys that came late in the season for in terms of the bullpen. Patrick Riley and Jaden Woods are the two that come to mind the most. Jaden in his first, I think, 10 or 12 bullpen appearances last year did not allow a hit. Was just so dominant. Um, and another guy I think that the Pirates have done a really good job of is finding pitchers down the draft sheet who come in and are just ready to throw strikes and get to work. And that was Jaden. It was unbelievable. He could give you we could protect a 1-run lead in the bottom of the ninth inning with runners on base, or he could give you 3 innings of shutout ball if you needed him to. He was just a very versatile guy to come out of the bullpen. And then Pat Riley, goes without saying, you play at Vanderbilt, you're going to be a pretty good baseball player when you come to the professional level. But just really impressive velo, and another guy that just, I think, has unbelievable potential with the coaching staff in Bradenton and the Pirates as a whole.
Yeah, the 2022 draft seemed surprisingly pitcher heavy. Obviously, guys
Mm-hmm.
like Harrington, I mean, behind Tramar Johnson, who we're going to talk about in a second,
Yeah.
but we're seeing a lot of those guys kind of filling in roles, whether that's starting or relief. And as you mentioned with like Patrick Riley and Jaden Woods, really excelling. Woods has been someone who I've heard about and haven't been able to take as close a look. It's been something that's come up a lot this off season. Is there a specific pitcher, like bullpen pitcher, and then we'll move on, who you were really excited about last year?
Ryan Harvin.
Very
Ryan
good. Handy dandy
Harvin.
sheet over here.
Yeah. It's a name that's not as well known, but if you really break down the analytics and the velo from him last year, it's pretty impressive what he was able to do. Harbin probably has one of the best draft stories I've ever heard from a guy. So he's from Bartow, Florida, which is about 45 minutes from Bradenton.
Right.
Wasn't even recruited to play Division 1, 2, or 3 college baseball out of high school, and he had it was the Florida State High School All-Star game was being played at Lakeland at the Tigers ballpark, and a pitcher dropped out of it, and Harbin was from a local high school, and they said, "Can you come fill in and we just need a pitcher to throw an inning." Basically is how he explained it to me. Like they just needed a body to show up and throw. And so Harbin goes to play in this game, but it was the night of his high school graduation. So he misses this graduation to go throw in this Florida high school all-star game. And lo and behold, there's a Pirates scout there that notices him, and he goes from being set up to play NAIA baseball to drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates and staying in his home state.
Yep.
Which is just such a random turn of events, which I think is so cool. But Harbin, until Paul Skeens showed up, had thrown, I think, 3 or 4 of the 10 fastest pitches on the entire season in a Marauders uniform. I want to say he was 19 of 20, damn near. I don't know if I can pardon my language, but in save
You're fine.
opportunities, had a sub 1 ERA by the time he got called up to Greensboro. But
Yeah.
was just,
Here's his stats. Let me go ahead and give you
yeah,
that.
yeah, go
He
ahead.
had 21 games, finished 11 of them, 32 and 2/3 innings, 0.83 ERA,
Yeah.
44
It's
strikeouts to 15 walks.
those are video game numbers for a guy
Like
out of the bullpen.
that's who you want in your bullpen. And
That's
if he's
elite.
got
That's
like great
a closer.
velocity,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a closer. I mean,
Uh,
that's like the definition of a closer.
yep, 17th round pick in the 2019 draft. But so I'm gonna have to look into him more. But switching gears to the offense, Tramar Johnson mentioned him, far and away our best hitting prospect. He had a slow start last year, kind of stymied spring training hamstring issue.
Yeah.
Got into 75 games there, 330 plate appearances, triple slash, 244, 419, 448, 13 home runs, 10 doubles. Strikeouts were a concern for someone so lauded for plate discipline, but you got to see him in person for much of the season. What are your
Yeah.
takeaways from Termar? Is he more of this kind of power? I mean, I compare him now to like Juan Soto, where his batting average isn't going to be
Yeah.
elite, but he's going to get a ton of walks, on base percentage over 400, and get a good amount of home runs. Finished with I think 23 last year, something like that.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway watching Termar last year?
I think the biggest thing for Termar, I think Juan Soto's a great comp. Um, he likes to. I know his favorite player is Robbie Cano, so that was kind of his always the guy he aspired to be in terms of a baseball player. But what Termar opened up last year was his backside hitting. Was he was able to, instead of trying to pull everything down the right field line for a home run, he really opened up the left center field gap, poking it down the line, and just diversified his approach at the plate in terms of where he could take the baseball off the bat. And you mentioned the walks. There in Termar's last month with us, one day Termar comes up to me and some of the coaches were sitting in the coach's office, and he goes, "I went 4 for 5 today." And I'm thinking to myself, no, Termar, you went 2 for 3, but okay. He's like, he goes, yep, 2 hits, 2 walks, 5 plate appearances. I'm like, oh, okay. So he got to the point where he was just starting to count walks as hits because he was getting on base so much with his ability to just work the count deeper and deeper. And I that was the Marauders in general last year. We broke minor league records for the amount of walks that we drew as a ball club. We didn't break the Florida State League record, which I know the coaching staff and I looked up back then. It was something like 1,132 walks in like 1927. So we were a couple hundred
Wow.
off of the league walks record. But yeah, I'm sure they were underhanding the ball back then or something. That's what led to
Yeah.
so many free bases. But
uh,
no, Termar
Probably something like that.
diverse diversified his approach so much to where he started counting walks as hits. His power is unbelievable, but you're not going to find a lot of guys like him, I don't think, in the game of baseball. Who there was one game where he went 3 for 4 with a 2-run tank that was hit like 450, but then also 2 push bunt
Jeez.
singles that he beat out at first. So there's not a lot of guys that are going to have 2 bunt singles and a monster tank home run in the same game. It's pretty impressive. Just um, how well he can keep a defense on its toes because he has opened up all parts of the field. He can bunt, he can knock one over the boardwalk, and it's really impressive how much he grew in Bradenton. And I think the biggest thing he grew in was his mental side of the game. His first year, I think he'd admit he was a guy that got frustrated really easily. That was and who wouldn't be if you're coming from playing against high school kids that throw 84 to we saw 100 plus velo a couple times this year. And this, it was obviously Termar's second year, but he saw that as an 18-year-old kid fresh out of high school, that he was facing guys
Yeah.
that were touching 98, 99 consistently. And I think who wouldn't have trouble adjusting to that physically and mentally as a player. But he really just found a peace with himself and a peace with his game this past year that was you know a result of him getting called up to Greensboro, and he kept on hitting the crap out of the baseball when he went to Greensboro.
Yeah. No, it was a stellar year. One of, I want to say, 6 players in the minor leagues with 100 plus walks. Jesus Castillo was one of those as well. But
Yep.
Termar did it with the least amount of plate appearances of that group. With Johnson being part of that 2022 draft, where it was very top heavy with high school hitters, including the
Yep.
current number 1 prospect in all of baseball, Jackson Holliday, does he, because Holliday has the potential to be on a major league roster to start the season, Johnson
Yeah.
further down that on that, and not that we don't need
Yeah.
a second baseman, that's not certainly set in stone yet, but does Johnson have, like, when he would play, would he get into that kind of comparison of, oh, I need to be better than Holiday, better than Jones, better than those other guys in that draft class, or is he just staying focused in his own game? Because it's a
Yeah.
very different
No,
game from those
Termar.
guys. Holiday was one of
Yeah.
the 100 walk guys, but
I think that's why I'll first up. No, I don't think he has never. I've never even heard him mention Jackson Holiday or anyone else from that draft class. He's friends with a lot of other guys from that draft. He's friends pretty close with Drew Jones, I know too. Um, but it's I think when it comes to Jackson Holiday, he is so different as a player, and I think also to call a spade, is the Orioles that are a much different place than the Pirates are right now in terms of would it do Termar any good to go up to Pittsburgh right now? I don't know. I'm sure everyone would love to play in the major leagues, but Termar is as far as top 5 picks in a draft go, I've never seen a guy who is just more within himself to be happy to be playing baseball where he is and to just continue to develop. It was very rare, if ever, I don't that I can recall, where any guy in that clubhouse ever said like, I got to get out of here. I got to go to Greensboro. I got to keep moving up. Everyone was just there to show up and play every day. And I think Termar was a big part of that. Um, I wherever he goes, they have to have a Chick-fil-A and a Chipotle within 5 minutes of the ballpark, or that man will not survive. Um, that
He'll
is
be good
that
in
is
Pittsburgh.
like, yeah. If there's a Chick-fil-A or a Chipotle bag in the clubhouse garbage can, you know who it was every time. But
All right.
yeah, just getting to work with Termar, there were times where I'm like, wait, I'm 6 years older than you, but you somehow have the professionalism of a 28-year-old dude, and it was just really impressive to see how much he grew in Bradenton mentally. That was the biggest thing for him this past year, and I think it showed on the field that he was just so much more relaxed and able to play his true game.
Yeah. Well, my main takeaway from that is no one wants to go to Greensboro, but the team did
Maybe,
have a number of. I mean, it's hitter haven there, but I'll talk about that next week with whoever my guest ends up being. The With Bradenton, number of fun players he had come through both before and after the draft.
yeah,
International prospects: Shalen Polanco, Yordani De Los Santos, 2021 draft pick Lonnie White Jr., who I'm still very high on. I'm glad to see
yeah,
he's was able to have a at least mostly healthy year. And then post
yeah.
draft, Mitch Jebb, Charles McAdoo, Garrett Forster. Each of those guys are very different hitters in approach, results, what they're kind of targeting for the most part. What stood out to you the most among these guys?
I'll start from the most recent draft guys, and kind of work my way back. There's just so many names that keep. It's like a slot machine right now in my head, like McAdoo, Jeb, just rolling over and
Yep,
over. But McAdoo put together the single greatest at any level of baseball, majors down to high school, whatever. The greatest single
yep,
game hitting performance I have ever seen, that I've ever watched highlights of, that I've ever seen live. When he went 6 for 6 in Fort Myers with 8 RBI, 2 homers, and a couple of hard hit ground balls, a couple of inside out swings that ended up as duck fart singles. Just such a versatile hitter. And a guy that, that seems to be kind of who the Pirates are drafting a lot of lately defensively, is he can play in left field, he can play right, he can play second base. He can move
yep,
around the diamond, kind of like a G1 Bay type player where you can stick him wherever. Henry Davis playing in right field, but also catching, and you might stick him at first base. The Pirates seem to have a lot of guys in the system that can play, all over the minor league system. Garrett Forster, another great name. Obviously got injured with us, so missed about the last month and a half, I want to say, of the season. Um, but he has the best eye of any hitter I saw the entire season. He drew in an a unorthodox amount of walks, considering the short stint that he had in Bradenton. He just got on base, and he's a guy who will abuse and really succeed with the automatic balls and strikes strike zone. Just that's so tight. He will draw a heap of walks at whatever level he's at with the eye that he possesses. And Mitch Jebb, the last guy from that most recent draft class, was just a unbelievably aggressive base runner, which with his speed turned singles into doubles. It turned, his first ever plate appearance. I'll just leave it at this for Mitch. All you need to know about him: a ground ball that barely squirts through the infield, that ends up as a double, diving headfirst into second base. And
yep.
then on the very next pitch, a wild pitch to the backstop that Mitch scores all the way from second base on. And it's not even a close play at home plate. Just fearless on the base paths. His swing is something so many people talk about, how it's unorthodox. It
Yep.
is a little goofy for sure. It doesn't look natural, but it works for him because he hit for a good average. He got on base and he used his speed to, make plays, and another guy that's a great middle infielder, to kind of, I think, complement Termar Johnson in the system maybe this year or the next year.
Yeah, definitely. With I think Forrester, he had 10 walks in 29 plate appearances. With Jeb, that unorthodox way that he kind of uh, his swing is unorthodox is pretty much the only term we could use for it. It's just very weird.
Yeah.
He's kind of got this like Ichiro Suzuki where he's already running as he's hitting the ball, sort of thing, as he's
Yeah, I
slapping
like to
it.
say
But
it's like a slapper, and it's like a slap hit in
yeah,
softball. Like if you watch college softball, that's and
sure.
the result is almost the exact same thing. It's he's taking it the other way, or he's poking it down the line, and it turns into extra base hits for him.
And with the shift being removed, I guess
Cool.
universally now because it was hasn't been in the
Yeah,
minors, that's opening the opportunity for him to be able to find those
yeah,
holes in the infield and get those slap hits and turn them into doubles because of his great speed. Uh,
yeah.
of that first group, the one I mostly want to talk about is Lonnie White Jr. because
Yep.
like he's in that class with Anthony Solomito, Bubba Chandler, Henry Davis, high school hitter. Malvern Prep was committed to PSU. He just cannot stay healthy, and he's got so much talent. You were able to see him healthy this past year. What are your
Yeah.
like just straight up thoughts on Lonnie White and his ability to, if he stays healthy, move up through the system?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, he's a physical beast. You mentioned from Malvern, he committed to Penn State to play football and baseball at the same,
Yep, wide
be a two sport athlete. Yeah, that's pretty unbelievable. Um, but Lonnie's first week with us, we were in Daytona for 4th of July, and first ball ever hit to him in right field, probably about 320 feet back. Catches it, no crow hop, no janitor throw, guns a guy down, tagging up from third, and I'm like, wow, this guy has some arm strength in the outfield. And then he figured out how to put the ball in play and barrel it up, and I went, oh my god, this guy can absolutely destroy baseballs. Long ball Lonnie White Jr. is what we started calling him in Bradenton last year. Um, one or two grand slams, a couple of real clutch spots offensively. Um, I think he he's going to be a big league player in my eyes, but I mean this in like the best way possible. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be an everyday player who will hit for really good numbers, who will play outstanding defense. And he will be a guy that starts on the lineup card every day, but he might not be an all-star every year. But I think that he is just going to be a very successful professional at the major league level. And not every prospect's going to be an all-star is one thing that I've learned for sure, is that some guys are just going to make it, and that's more than most do. And I think Lonnie's a guy that'll make it and be a productive guy for Pittsburgh.
That's my hope. I mean, you think about like Ryan Reynolds. Everyone's saying like,
Yeah.
oh, he's face of the franchise, big contract, all that. Just like he's just a productive guy. He's not an all star every year. He had 1 year he got MVP votes. If Lonnie White Jr. approaches that, that's great. Like you said, so many
Yeah.
guys fizzle out, and so many like I just like I mentioned wrapped up my top 30 prospects. Third year that I've done it, and if I go back and look, a good amount of guys who I've mentioned on that either didn't make it, aren't going to make it, are in different organizations.
Yep.
You can have all the hope in the world for these guys, and there's a lot of luck to it, and just making it to the show.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think just
But
one more guy, if I could touch on just
go
one
for it.
last guy. I don't mean to take up too much of your time, but
I got my coffee. I'm good.
person the person I've tweeted about to look out for since the first week of the season last year, and some people are high on him, some people aren't. Jack Brannigan, Jack Brannigan, Jack Brannigan, Jack Brannigan, Jack Brannigan. I'll say it 50 times. Jack Brannigan is, in my opinion, the most well-rounded player in the system right now. There's not a lot of third basemen that are gonna steal 20 bags for you. He has great speed, great intuition on the base paths, hits for power. He can turn doubles into triples. He is outstanding defensively. He missed some time with injury, but at third base is just an unbelievable arm from the hot corner and can play short and second too. So
Yep.
I digress, but buy Jack Brannigan stock if you're a Pirates fan right now, because he will impress. He had a really rough time in the Arizona Fall League, but
I was
finished
gonna
strong
say
with a
he.
couple of home. Yeah, he finished strong down the stretch with a couple of homers. I actually went down to Arizona to see him during the Fall League. Yeah, I went to Arizona State, so I was there for homecoming, and I texted Bran, and I'm like, "You guys playing today?" And sure enough, they were. So came out, got to see a game, and just a good dude who wants to be a part of the Pirates organization. And buy Jack Brannigan stock. Just do it. Don't ask questions. Just buy Jack Brannigan stock for sure.
I really like Brannigan. You mentioned third base. I think he was drafted, may have been drafted as a two-way player. He was a relief pitcher in college,
Yeah, he
but
was,
in
but
Arizona,
hasn't gotten the pitch. Yeah,
yeah, no, I think they've kind of pushed past that. Maybe aren't doing that for
yeah,
anyone. Arizona
yeah.
Fall League, he exclusively played shortstop with
Yep.
the Saltwater Raptors. So that's exciting. His floor, like going back to Harrington, Harrington's got one of the highest floors of the pitching prospects. Maybe
Yeah.
Skeens is higher than him, but Harrington's just got such good control. I feel like Brannigan has that high floor for the position player level. And so
Yeah.
he might not have like the highest, like a 30 plus home run ceiling, but he's got that like Jared Triolo kind of floor where he
Yeah.
could be a super
For
utility,
sure.
versatile, great fielder, great, really strong arm from what I've seen on that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I can buy on Brannigan, but
Sweet.
looking
Welcome to the
to
club.
this, I think I had him 20. I'd have to go back and look. He was in my 20 to 21 to 30 group for the top 30 prospects. Um, but looking to this season, Fangraphs roster resource predicts a few holdovers at Bradenton. Omar Alfonso is a name that came up during that prospect series. He had strong numbers last season, triple slash of 273, 390, 413, 182 plate appearances. He did have a strong BABIP of 363, which would come back to earth
Mhm.
as he moves up the levels. The defense in the lower levels isn't always as good as
Yeah.
the higher ones. But entering a year where he's going to be 24 essentially the entire season, what can you tell me about Alfonso?
I think Omar's a guy who should not be in single A anymore. I think I had this debate a lot with coaches last year and other people that worked in the MILB sphere, but there is 100% some sort of value to being a clutch player. Um, Omar Alfonso, and I'll throw Giovanni Planchart a mention here too. Uh,
Okay.
both hit over 450 with runners in scoring position last year. Uh, and to me, that talks specifically, if you want to put it in uh, a baseball mind point of view, that means they have an unbelievable freaking approach in the batter's box. That's one thing that so many guys last year on any team in the Florida State League, and when the Marauders were included, you had guys that hit 28, 280, 271, but then hit 150 with runners in scoring position. Because they
Yeah.
just could not change their approach to do the job. And Omar and Planchart were guys that both realized, like if I hit a ground ball here with a runner on third and one out, it'll score a run. And instead of trying to find a gap, they just went up there to do their job and bring a run in. And more often than not, to be my favorite cliche, you put the ball in play, good things are going to happen. Um, and Omar really developed late in the season as a power hitter, and I think I'm hoping for his sake, because he's such a great dude, that his ability to play first base will really help him jump up the levels, at some point too.
Yeah. 16.5% walk rate last year, strikeout rate only 25.3%. Those are respectable numbers. Great plate discipline, like you said, was able to hit in the clutch. Final thing before we wrap up on this, player you saw or even wish to see, because I know some guys were supposed to make it to Bradenton and didn't quite get there. Who you saw last year, who fans should most be excited about going into this season, whether they're going to move up or be in Bradenton all
Okay.
year. It's hard to say, but guy who we haven't talked about, who you're most excited about, or even someone who we did. I don't care.
I mean, I'll say Paul Skeens because if I don't, then some people might be worried because
Get out of here.
But Paul Skeens, yes, be excited about Paul Skeens, everybody. He is good. He is as advertised. But I would
You
say
guys didn't
kind
get
of a
the Livy Dunn, however you say her name, rush in Bradenton like they did in Altoona when he
oh,
debuted there.
we did. So yeah, his first start, I was with Mark McKnight. I was telling you the story about Paul talking about the Air Force Academy, and Mark McKnight, the clubhouse manager, asked him in that same conversation, "Is your girlfriend coming tonight?" Because this was kind of at the stage where that relationship wasn't public yet. I mean, we all knew about it for a while, but it wasn't
Mhm.
out in the world, so to say. But he was like, "Yeah, I got her tickets." And she probably sat down in her seat for maybe 2 minutes before there was a line of 250 teenage boys up and down the rows of Lecom Park waiting to get a picture with her. And I remember texting one of our front office members because I could see it from the press box, and I'm like, Livy is getting swarmed right now. We had a plan for this. We had talked about it in our weekly meeting. So she spent the rest of the series sitting in the press box next to me, actually, which was pretty cool. You know, uh, not that it relates to baseball, but really nice person. Like,
Good.
you see how famous both Paul and Livy are, but like they're both just fantastic people, really nice people. But yeah, that was a
Good.
whirlwind for us to have Livy done at
I,
Lecom Park. Was pretty crazy.
I, sh- I imagine she might be the first like wives and girlfriend of a pirate player to or pirate prospect to get a bobblehead at some point
Yeah,
within the team, like
yeah.
as a
I mean,
giveaway. Because it's so weird.
it'll definitely happen. But that's one thing I remember we were talking about earlier. The interviews that Paul was doing, like he doesn't like to talk about his personal life. His sister runs his Instagram account. Like he's just focused on the job. He's a pretty low key dude. So it's very interesting that she's so public and he's so quiet. But when you meet both of them, they're just it makes sense. They're just awesome people, and she's a really cool person. So it's good for the Pirates. I think it's like free PR. When she posts a Snapchat story wearing a Pirates hat, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Pirates could use
Um,
some good PR these days. So,
Fair, fair. But to
but
go back to your question, one guy to look out for to be excited about, Termar Johnson. I know we talked about him, but I think he's really going to hit a peak here. I expect to see him start in Altoona. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. And I think we could see him in AAA towards the end of the season, kind of like kind of like Solo did, kind of a late season push to move up a level. So yeah, I think Termar. I know we talked about him, but he has so much room to grow. He's still, he would still be in college right now. And I think that's what a lot of people
yep.
forget. I think people on Twitter, are most volatile when it comes to Tamar Johnson. They're really up on him or they're really down, depending on if he's striking out or hitting home runs. But just keep the faith in him. I think that's a guy that is going to explode this year. So I'm done with my rambling. You have your show back
No,
now.
you're good. Hey, Jamar Johnson, 5'8", pure muscle. Uh, I'm excited for him. I like I said, I make a Juan Soto comp for him. So I
Yeah,
don't see his like Jose Altuve height. I mean, Jose Altuve as a comp is fine too, but
yeah.
I could see a lot even higher ceiling for Termar. But
For sure.
thank you so much for jumping on the show. I'll be right back with the weekly recap. And I am back and joined by my double play partner, Ed Wassel. Haven't seen him since Pirates Fest. He haven't been on since the episode right before that because we had our top 30 prospects. But hopefully you'll be able to be back because we're going to be doing farm system. Had a great talk with Ben the other day. Really excited for you guys to hear that. But let's get into some news from this past week. Big one, obviously, Mitch Keller extension, 5 years, 77 million. They had reached arbitration for 5.4425 million. So it looks like that's what the amount is for this year. Signing bonus of a little over 2 million. I think that's spread out over the first couple years, something like that. 2025, 15 million. 26 is 16.5. 27 is 18. 28 is 20 million. I'm getting these numbers from our numbers guru, Ethan Houlihan. Were you surprised that this deal ended up coming together? I know that was something was rumored, talked about all off season, but the fact that it actually happened here at the start of spring training, what were your thoughts on that?
I wasn't necessarily surprised that it came together. I think everyone had hoped and expected it to prior to the start of the season. What surprised me is that the first 2 years of the contract basically cover his last 2 years of arbitration rather than like an actual 5 year extension. That's what I was
Yeah,
hoping for. More of like a 7 year
it's
deal
a
than
it's a 3 year extension,
yeah.
pretty much.
But I
So
mean, at least we know he's definitely
AAV of
locked up for 5
15.4.
years.
Yeah, and highest AAV, second highest, or maybe third highest. No, I think it's higher than Hayes got. So second highest contract the Pirates have given out. Reynolds is still the highest in total dollars amount, but yeah, by far the most they've given a pitcher. Next highest was 3 years, 36 million or 39 million to Liriano back in 2014, 2015, something like that. So definitely a big dollar amount. Moves this past week, only move, Kenan Smith and Jigba came back. He was waived by the Mariners magically, even though the Pirates apparently were last in line under the new rules. They were able to add him. They moved JT Brubaker to the 60-day IL. That's pretty much it for the 60-day guys. Mike Burrows is not going to pitch for a long period of time, but they didn't put him on the 60-day last year. They're unlikely to start his clock this year. I mean, we'll see with that. I'm happy to have CSN back. I was a bit surprised, but I'm glad that they did it because he has a lot of upside. Surprised that he didn't stick with Seattle, but sometimes that stuff doesn't happen. Now I kind of wish that he was in my top 30 prospects list. You have any thoughts on that? CSN coming back?
No, I'm happy that he's coming back. I know basically when the news broke that he was the 40-man move, we were both like, oh, that's our guy.
We kind of figured it was coming too. I was messaging a few people on Twitter, and one of them, our buddy Mike Crawford with the Pirates, he's like, "Do you think it's going to be CSN?" I'm like, I worry that it's going to be. So I'm glad that he was able to come back and that maybe they can make something work. I'm going to talk about his performance in the game against the Twins in a minute, but first, the big news this week that came before the Keller extension was Stephen Nesbitt of The Athletic posted an article detailing some things about the Pirates that were a little bit unsavory on the national spotlight. It's a lot of stuff that we, as fans, as people who follow this pretty closely, already knew, but it's pretty much putting it out there, plain for everyone else, kind of like that. I don't want to say the Hoka Hey stuff, but it's all kind of coming out in that sort of sense. So some of the stuff that was new for me, I think, for it was that the money for the new building or buildings in Bradenton came out of the MLB club operating budget, about $8 million for that. The team waited a day to make a trade to save 30,000. The Nunnally situation, we knew about that stuff last year. He worked with Key Brian Hayes, was helping with the swing and mechanics and things like that. It was very hush hush. Nesbitt was on with the NS9 guys last week, where he was able to get into a little bit more detail on that. But overall, was very was I don't want to say defamatory because it was pretty much laying plain what was going on, but it definitely paints the team in a bad light. And Nesbitt, I mean, he was previously a beat writer with the Post Gazette, so he covered the Pirates not that long ago. This wasn't new for him. He must have been aware of a lot of this stuff. Ken Rosenthal apparently approached him and said, "Hey, let's do this story," and he was like, "I've got it half written, man," pretty much. So you admitted that you have not read the article.
Correct.
But you have heard a lot of the stuff about it.
Yeah, I've got snippets of some of the stuff that was in it, and personally, I'm happy it came out because maybe it'll, shine a little national light, which a lot of people already talked about the way the organization was run. But maybe having some of that stuff released will pressure Nutting to either, do things the right way, or I mean, I don't see him selling the team. He just makes too much money.
No, it's just not going to happen right now.
Yeah. How cheap
So
do you
that
have to
was
be to wait a day to save $30,000, dude?
I I'm interested as to like what the situation was there that happened, because they must have been trading for someone to improve the team and it would have increased the payroll. And but like,
It was probably like, oh, the paychecks hit tomorrow, so we have to wait for a day.
I mean, it must have been something like, let's wait until the like trade deadline, down to the minute, to sign, like trade for Morneau or Marlon Bird or whatever it was back in 2013, or in like that range. But I mean, we're probably never going to know for sure. But positive side, for people who are excited about it, at least, spring training game started this week. We got our 2 games. Twins game on Saturday. Bailey Falter, strong first inning, ran into trouble in the second. Jared Jones, big prospect, big velo immediately, working fastball slider. Per Baseball Savant, he had 1 changeup and 1 curve of his 15 pitches. I think he was 9 strikes, 6 walks. Control's been a bit of an issue for him, but he's just working on his stuff. It's first appearance. You take very little from the results that you're seeing this weekend, and even the first week or 2 weeks of spring training. Jose Hernandez, he faced 4 batters, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts, so he's in like midseason form. Henry Davis, 3 really hard hit balls. Got hits on 2 of them. The third one almost left the yard. Behind the dish, and it was a radio only broadcast, so he made a great catch on the net. Sounded like a great catch based on how Brownie and Walker responded to it. But there were 3 wild pitches while he was behind the dish, so I don't know if those were corrallable or not. Like I said, radio only. Don't know who's truly at fault there. Furthest hit ball was a near homer in the first inning by Kanan Smith and Jigba. It's caught on the fairway. I think it was first pitch. It may have been first or second pitch, but he launched it, and you could hear it on the broadcast. Really excited. And then he had like a bloop single his second at bat. Edward Olivares, big 2-run triple in the third, scored 2 runs. Surprised. I don't know. Again, radio only. Don't know that he has like the kind of speed to get a triple, especially Bradenton. It's not a huge park. Big difference in the game, unfortunately. Kyle Nicholas, he got 2 outs in his inning. I think it was like the 5th, maybe 6th inning. Men on the corners, gave up a home run. Had an expected batting average of .080. Sometimes baseball just doesn't work that way. Spring training, like I said, not looking at results much yet. Team lost 2-0. Excuse me. What was the score? 5-3 on Saturday. Today, game against the Orioles, Keller started, got a pair of Ks, I think 1 or 2 walks in his 2 innings. Dario Moreta pitched the second inning. He looked really good, really sharp. Velocity was mid-90s. Offense took a bit to get going. Hard contact. Hayes, 2 batted balls over 105 miles per hour. Leo Piguero had 1 at 100 and 1 at 99. Cruz, he launched a ball into literal orbit. Very foul, but like it left Lecom. It went so, it may have gone to Pirate City. Bunch of balls hit hard that got knocked down by the wind. Reynolds, Gonzalez, Brannigan each hit what sounded like homers off the bat, looked like homers off the bat, and then the wind just blew it. The wind was all over the place. A couple guys were having trouble getting catching the ball. Nick Gonzalez at one point in the 7th inning, I want to say, hit, or maybe it was the 6th inning, hit the ball, and the second baseman was trying to track it and ended up falling, like bouncing off his glove right by the first baseline. And Gonzalez ended up with a double. The wind just kept blowing it. Just Bradenton wind is weird. Brannigan, I just talked about with Ben. He especially, like 108.3 off the bat. I think it was the hardest hit ball by a Pirate today. Expected batting average of 940. Again, sometimes it's just how it goes. In the field, Cruz turned a double play in the first inning. Looked really spry. Peggy, nice defensive stop. in the fourth, I want to say. Like covered a lot of ground getting to that ball, and Rowdy fielded well. He even got a line out in I think the second inning for that. So definitely promising. Not after the starters left, there were some defensive issues, but you know, spring training for everybody. Not gonna get into too much there. Lost 5-3
Don't
to the Twins. Lost 2-0
don't forget
today.
about Gorski's throw in what was the top of the ninth.
Yeah, top of the ninth. I mean, another run scored, but it should have been a double, and Gorski was in left field, and he gunned out a guy at second. It was a close play, but yeah, Gorski's got an arm.
Yeah, that was a nice throw.
That was really good. Roansy Contreras scheduled to pitch on Monday. As you're listening to that, this episode, it's either today or it already happened. Excited to see how he looks this spring. A lot of good things we're hearing out of Pirate City. Hoping he's put things back together, ready for a breakthrough season. Did I miss anything else with the games or anything else that happened this week?
I don't think so.
Gonna have to look and double check. I'm pretty sure that's it. Like I said, it's spring training. We're going to be hearing stories. It doesn't look like anything else is going to be any other acquisitions, trades. Everything seems like it's kind of done right now, which is what it is, I guess, because there's a lot of pitchers that they're probably going to want to see between the four who might be making those final rotation spots. Last thing, I'm going to go ahead and plug because it's friends of ours, Murph, Nola, John Drecker, a bunch of guys got together. Draft Nation 2024, Pittsburgh Pirates minor league guide, Dave Finoli, like just all the people who know everything about the Pirates. They, John and David Finoli have written a whole bunch of books on the Pirates. So if you get a chance, if you're interested in learning more about their minor leagues, they've got a guide for this year. I don't know if it's going to be an annual thing, but I'm excited to get my copy. Definitely check it out. I'll post a link for it just because, why not? But that wraps it up for this week's episode. Thank you again to Ben Pokorny for jumping on with me this week. He's no longer in the Pirates organization. Fortunately, keeps in touch with the guys, was a really good resource for that stuff. He's moved to the Pioneer League, working play-by-play for the Idaho Falls team this season. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben Pokorny. You can also find me there, 412 Double Play, Ed at _Wassel. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see we've got our handles on there now. Real fun. Continue listening to the show, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. We recently jumped in the top 250 in all of baseball podcasts for Apple. I don't know how that happened, but that's kind of crazy for me. So thank you very much for listening. I'm sure it's all bolstered by the top 30 super long episodes with Craig, but appreciate it. Subscribe to get notified when we drop our new episodes. Give it a rating if it's positive, at least. We appreciate it. And thank you again for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week, hopefully with someone with Greensboro. Still working on getting a guest for that. And from all of us here at the 412 Double Play podcast, thank you for joining us, and let's go Bucks.
Let's go Bucks.